Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started, so thank you so much for coming and welcome to How to Manage Your Money as an International Student. My name's Greta Elliott and I am a welfare advisor from the Advice Place, which is part of the Edinburgh University Students' Association, and my pronouns are she, her. So today we're going to start off with my presentation, which is about 15 minutes long. And in this presentation, we're going to start by looking at fee payments, then looking at paying rent in university accommodation, a wee bit about banking, a little bit on living costs, and finally a section on scams before we move on to about 15 minutes for you to ask me any questions that you have. So first of all, we're going to look at paying your fees, a bit about when to pay your fees, how you can make payments, and the university's instalments plan. So in terms of when you have to pay your fees, you'll have 30 days from the date that you receive an invoice from the university, and that could be through an email, or from the date that you matriculate, whichever of those happens first. If your studies aren't starting on the 21st of September, if you've got a later start date, do check the university's payment timetable. So what I'm going to do now is post in the chat box a variety of links that I'm going to refer to throughout my presentation. So do copy and paste these somewhere helpful so that you can access them at a later stage. But one of those links is the university's fee payment timetable, and that tells you all the deadlines for payments that you should be aware of. The other key thing to do is to log into your student portal at MyEd and to head to the My Finance channel. This channel is really important and I'll refer to it a lot throughout my presentation, as it'll let you know lots of different payments that you need to make, including for your tuition fees. It'll let you know how much you need to pay and when you need to pay. And also in My Finance, you can actually make payment. A word of warning that if you do make any payments to the university late, you can face late charges, and in more serious cases, you can have your IT access suspended, and in the most serious cases, you can be withdrawn from your programme of study. So I would say if you are worried about paying your fees, or if you're struggling to pay your fees, please contact the Advice Place and we can give you confidential, impartial advice. At the end of my presentation, I'll let you know how you can get in touch with the Advice Place. In terms of how to make a payment of your tuition fees, you can make your payment online by logging into the student portal MyEd and heading through to My Finance. You can use any debit or credit card, and we would say to check with your bank to make sure that there's not any transfer charges or what the exchange rate is. You can also pay online through the university's Global Pay platform. And I would just say not to transfer any money directly to the university using a bank transfer. Instead, use their secure platforms, the Global Pay platform and My Finance in MyEd. You can also get in touch with the university's scholarships and student funding team if you have a government loan. For example, if you're a UK student, or if you, for example, are a US student who receives a FAFSA loan. So you can see the scholarships and student funding team's email address on the slide. And you can find out a bit more about paying your tuition fees using the links in the chat box. So the second one is University Fees FAQs, and that gives you lots of advice about how to make payments. In the chat box, I've also posted the email address of the Finance Helpline, and that is the university team who can help if you've got any questions about paying your fees or if you're having any difficulties. So you can choose to pay your tuition fees in advance. You can pay 100% of your fees in advance or when you matriculate. Or some students prefer to pay the fees by instalment. Unfortunately, not the option of a monthly payment plan. Instead, the university have a 3-part instalment plan. And I'm going to tell you a wee bit about that now. So the first instalment has to be at least 50% of the balance of your fees that are outstanding. And you'll pay using the methods that we've just mentioned, so using your card and paying online using the university's platforms. There are then 2 later instalments. They're both of 25%. The next 25% instalment is paid on the 3rd of December, and the final one is paid on the 3rd of February. To set up the instalment plan, you will need a UK bank account to pay these 2 final instalments. So the first one you can pay using a debit or credit card online, but the second 2 instalments have to be paid by something called direct debit. If you're not sure what a direct debit is, it is a regularly scheduled automatic payment that is sent from your bank account to the university. To set up a direct debit, you'll need to open a UK bank account, which we will discuss in my next part of my presentation. You'll also need to complete the direct debit form on your My Finance channel on MyEd, and you will need to have this arranged by the 14th of October. So in the chat box, there's some links to the university's web pages on paying your fees by instalment and also setting up a direct debit. Next, we're going to look at paying your rent if you live in university accommodation. Your rent will be collected on the 1st of each month after you move in. But you do have the option to pay once per semester, or you can pay monthly, and that would be over 10 months as a postgraduate student. Again, you can make payment through My Finance, the channel on MyEd, the student portal, and you can set up a recurring direct debit payment if you have a bank account. Again, in the chat box, there's links to rent payment FAQs and a link to the options of how you can pay your rent for university accommodation. Again, if you make a payment late, you can be charged. So if you have any difficulties and you're worried about paying or you might pay late, do contact the university's rent payment team using the details on the slide there. So I've mentioned a couple of times there about setting up direct debit payments, and to do this you would need a UK bank account. So we're going to cover a bit of information about what you might need to set up a bank account, what a bank introduction letter is, and some tips to help you choose a bank account. So generally, for traditional banks, you will need to apply online and later take your ID into a branch. Most banks will ask you to provide something that shows your address in the UK. Now, this could include your contract of accommodation or tenancy agreement, or your bank introduction letter, which I'm going to cover in the next slide. You'll also be asked to bring with you something that shows your photographic ID, so your passport or your BRP card. You may also be asked to bring your student card. It's important to note that nowadays there are also lots of digital app-based banks, and many of these app-based banks will not ask you to provide the same amount of documentation. So you might not have to provide confirmation of your UK address for digital banks. And in the chat box, I've posted a few links to the best app-based banks and the top UK-based bank students 2020. So for some of the traditional bank branches, UK banks, you can take in a bank introduction letter with you to show that you are a student and to show that you have a UK address. And this letter is accepted by most of the high street banks in the central campus area. To get this letter, either if you're staying in university accommodation, you can access it after you've checked in, or if you're not staying in university accommodation, you can access it after you have fully matriculated. And to find it, you'll need to log into your MyEd student portal and download the letter from there. And if you need any more instructions on this, do contact the advice place. So Save the Student has a review of the top 20 bank accounts for international students 2020. And we appreciate it can be really tricky and overwhelming because there are so many different bank accounts out there and there are so many different UK banks that you could choose. The Advice Place's webpage on banking, which is in the chat box, has lots more local information that you can use to make a decision. But we would recommend having a thinking about your priorities and what you need from your bank. Would you prefer to have a local branch that you can go into in person to pay cash or cheques? How much would it cost for you to transfer or receive money from overseas? And would it be helpful for you to have a bank branch in your home country? And remember, there are digital, ethical and Sharia compliant banks all available in the UK. So we're going to look quickly at living costs before moving on to our final point of scams. The average cost of living in Edinburgh will vary from person to person, and on this slide we have listed some of the kind of upper and lower levels of cost for accommodation, groceries and bills, but it will really vary from person to person, and we would advise having a really detailed budget set out of what your income's going to be and what your expenses each month are going to be and how much you have left for your living costs. You can find out more information about the cost of living in Edinburgh and about budgeting, and I've posted some of the links to these different resources on the slide in the chat box. And the university's top 6 tasks include one of the tasks which is about preparing your finances. So I would recommend having a look at that task in particular. If you do get into difficulty, the university does have a hardship fund which can award you a grant to help with your living costs if you are in unexpected financial difficulty. The Advice Place website also has a page on extra funding which lists different grants and charities which provide funding. And we would recommend getting in touch with the Advice Place who can discuss your options with you. You might be considering working in the UK whilst you're here. So we would advise you to check the terms of your visa if you're in the UK on a visa, and you can contact the university's Student Immigration Service for more information. To work in the UK, you'll need a national insurance number, and the Advice Place has a web page all about the national insurance number and tax in the UK and how you can apply for one. The university's career service has something called My Career Hub, which lists lots of different employment opportunities that are flexible and that are kind of student friendly. So finally, a word on scams. We're going to look at some scams that we have seen before and some tips on how to avoid them and what to do if you have been scammed. So unfortunately, every year students are targeted by very sophisticated scammers, and unfortunately can experience being scammed. So do be cautious. There are some examples of slides of scams on the slide here that you can have a wee look through. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to avoid them. But do bear in mind that there are scams out there where someone pretends to be from the UK government, the HMRC office, and they will call you or email you or send you a letter to tell you that you owe money or that you are due a tax refund. There are also scams mainly targeting Chinese students who pretend to be from your country's government and tell you to pay money to avoid being in trouble with the police. And there are accommodation scams, unfortunately, as well as many others, so I'll let you read that in your own time. We would say if you're not expecting a call, do hang up or do not pick up the phone, and do some research about the company or organisation that the scammer is claiming to be from. Our government, your government, police, your bank and HMRC will never ask you to transfer money over the phone. Do question emails and letters and phone calls that you receive, as it's very easy for scammers to create something that looks real. If you're worried, please contact the Advice Place for information and we can discuss your worries with you. If you think you have been scammed, do not worry. There's no need to be embarrassed or ashamed. It is not your fault. It is 100% the fault of the scammer. Contact your bank as quickly as you can to see if they can stop or recover the payments. Check your passwords and secure your online accounts and information, and do report it to the police by calling 101. Be wary of further contact from scammers and contact the Advice Place for support. There are some resources on the slide here, as well as some links from the university on how to avoid scams as well that you can check out. But what I will do is, on the slide at the moment, we have the Advice Place's email address. So please do send your questions to our email address and we will do our best to get back to you as soon as we can. But thank you so much for listening. I hope the session's been helpful, and remember that you can stay in touch with us, and all the best for starting your studies. Thank you so much.